Hi, I am here and we're gonna make the backpack. So I'm going through step by step. If you know how to do a step, you maybe don't have to check these videos, but if you don't, they're here and you can rewatch them. As always, you can email me if you are unsure and need help. So starting out the backpack, you should have your pieces cut, and hopefully you have your pattern notches transferred. Notches are these little triangle things, and they're important because they tell you where pieces match up. Most of the time you cut them out of the fabric, but sometimes people forget. And if you do, there's a couple things you can do. Some people cut them into their fabric. I don't like that though, because if you cut them too deep, you've screwed up the piece. So I prefer methods like marking with a pen that can go away with washing, or you can use duct tape. So I cut some duct tape to the right sizes and put in all my notches, and I also labeled what the piece was.
So they aren't actually functional to the project. They're more like they're to help you along the way of putting the pattern together.
Yes, that's correct.
They're like signposts.
Yes, they tell you where things go. If you've forgotten up to this point, another thing, with any piece that you have interfacing, you can write them on the piece of interfacing. You want to make sure you're not writing it onto the dotted side, but you're writing it onto the smooth side. I made mine pretty dark because number one, I wanted you to see them, but also I have navy fabric, so I knew it wouldn't show through. You can make yours light. They can be done in pencil, things like that. But then it's on the wrong side and it's all right there. Yeah. So that actually worked for most all of my pieces. Speaking of interfacing, most of these pieces are mirror of each other. But one thing you want to make sure of, because this side piece tells you to cut 4 of interfacing, you want to make sure the interfacing is mirrored. So one way you can make sure to do that is as you take the interfacing piece, if you fold it in half, you'll have mirror copies. What you don't want is 4 pieces that all have dots facing the same side. So you need to have 2 of these and 2 of these, and my dots are on the bottom. I am gonna go ahead, because step 1 is apply fusible interfacing to the wrong side of front and back sections and side panels following manufacturer's directions. Number 1, read. There was a little paper sheet that should have come with your interfacing. Read how to do it, because that will save you a lot of, it tells you the temperatures, things like that. So read those, and if any of those disagree with what I'm going to tell you right now, follow those. If you have a print, you will be able to see which one is the right side and wrong side of the fabric. This material has a print, so I'd be applying it dot side to this back side. But this is a plain weave in a solid color, so it doesn't have a technical wrong and right side. That's where we're going to rely on our dots to tell us to make sure we get 2 mirror copies. So to apply interfacing, I lay out my piece on the board. I actually like to press it once to make sure it's nice and smooth. No wrinkles, things like that. Then I find the interfacing that dots down match up with this. Now this doesn't, so this is not this piece. Instead, I need this one. I could have just flipped it over, but it didn't.
You've already made your choice.
Yes. You want to get this on laying dots. Dots should be down on the fabric.
Dots are glue.
Yes, dots are glue. If any of them overhang the edge, you can sneak a piece of parchment paper underneath, or you could trim it up before you fuse it on. Most people iron by doing this back and forth sweeping motion. That's not what you want to do with interfacing. With interfacing, you want to, number 1, you want to have a dry iron. So I've made sure my heat or my steam is at a 0 setting, or I empty the iron of water. You start in the middle and you put it down and you count to about 10, and then you pick it up and you move it just 1 iron width in the next section. Count to 10. And the reason you don't want to smooth back and forth is because this will actually wrinkle and move, and you could wind up with wrinkles in your project. So we're just moving it the width of the iron each time, and we're moving from the center out to the edges. I don't know if you can see this, but where the glue has adhered, you can actually, like, you can't see the dots anymore. So that's where places glue is melted.
Now, is all interfacing iron-on?
No, so some...
Or did their project specifically call for iron-on?
It did. If you don't have iron-on interfacing, there's a couple things you could do. You could take spray glue and spray the interfacing and then stick it to the piece.
That sounds messy.
That does sound messy. Or when you match them up, you could go around the edge and stitch very close to the edge to hold them together. Okay, now I've made it through the whole piece. So I actually want to flip it over and make sure there's no wrinkles, because if there are, you have time to smooth them out now while the glue is still hot. I was pretty lucky on this one, but I'm going to avoid that because I don't want to get that glue stuck on my iron. So there's one piece.
Crisp.
And I'm going to go ahead and do the other one, but the rest of my pieces are done so that we can
do the magic of television.
Do the magic of television, right.
Move on.
Yes.
Once you've seen one iron-on interfacing video, you've seen them all,
yes.
I think.
So for the backpack, we want four of piece 15, which is side panel D. I've got 3 right here. And you'll notice all my markings are made on the interfacing. You want 2 of piece 14, which is the front and back, and I went ahead and wrote that on here. You want 4 of piece 16, which is the side pocket. Here, I'm going to show you something. If you have extra interfacing and your fabric is really, really wimpy, like I did this Madras and it's just really flimsy, which is nice for lining, but not nice for pockets. I used the extra interfacing I had to actually interface 2 pieces of my side pocket, which will give it more stability. It's totally optional, totally up to you. And the last thing you should have is 2 of piece 16, which is the front and back lining. Okay, so this is hanging off quite a bit over the edge here. If I had my parchment paper long, I'd do that, but right now we're gonna make a Post-it note substitute for that. The problem when it overhangs a lot and you fuse it, you might fuse it to your ironing board, and you can pull it up and off the ironing board, but whenever you iron over that spot, you have that, you never really get the glue completely off.
It's going to be sticky.
And it just messes up your future stuff.
You said wax paper works?
Wax paper works as well.
Or parchment paper.
Yeah. No, parchment paper.
I always confuse the two, but
yes,
parchment you don't want the wax on it.
You'll melt, yeah.
Right. So just regular parchment to keep your iron good and clean.
If you want something that's interesting, you can take freezer paper and you can actually iron it onto fabric and then peel it off later. So if you like cut a design out of freezer paper and then iron it onto the fabric, you can paint in that section and then peel it away and it's like a stencil.
Whoa.
I know, crazy. Okay, so we have our pieces. We're gonna go on to step 2, which says with right sides together, pin 2 side panel sections together, matching small dots and single notches. Stitch, leaving an opening between the 2 upper small dots as shown. So for this step, I only need pieces 15. I'm gonna move all these to the back. And because we've interfaced these pieces now, oh, see, here's an example of a wrinkly one. Can you pick that up on the phone?
Yep.
Okay, so we're gonna take it over here and we're gonna try to get it hot again. Smooth it out. That worked pretty nicely. If you've got a really big wrinkle, you can actually come in between here. I don't, but to show you, you can peel it apart, but then you want to just make sure you spend a good amount of time because you're reactivating that glue.
You probably can't do that a ton of times though, right? Or
no, not a ton. No.
I would imagine that glue
Yep.
dies at some point.
Yeah, all wrinkle-free. So these do have wrong and right sides now. So the right side is the blue side and the wrong side is
The interfacing.
Yes. So it says right sides together, and I'm looking at this picture too. We're going to match them up and pin along these edges. So this is actually where I'm flipping back and forth and making sure.
You're gonna match your notches and your
Then I match
dots.
my notches, yep. And for this pattern, it should match up in the other places. When you sew clothes, it's less likely to. That's why the notches become more important. But we're gonna pin.
Yeah, because these should just be mirrors of each other, right? So then.
Yeah, and a bag really doesn't have a lot of curved shape.
So as long as, well.
Yeah. So like if you were sewing an armhole, that's where you'd have notches to match it up, and the pieces would be like opposite of each other.
Okay.
And you'd have to pin to get them together. It's not here, but going back to the first page, it said all seam allowances for this pattern are 1/2 inch unless otherwise specified. Typical commercial patterns are 5/8 of an inch, so that's a little bit different, but so we're gonna sew with 1/2 inch unless specified. So we are gonna sew here, we're gonna stop at this dot back stitch, and then start again at this dot back stitch and come to the end. If you notice, my lights radically changed. We're in my office. And we're, if you are beginning to sew, you can matching your thread to your dominant color in your project helps hide a lot of flaws. I picked pink so you could see more clearly on this video where I'm sewing. I'm normally a big fan of color matching.
Well, it matches your madras, so that'll be fun.
Yes, it does.
We didn't have madras in any of our fabric swatches, I don't think.
I don't think I did. So as we get up to this dot, I'm going to stop at the dot, backstitch, and then I'm going to pick it up and move to the next dot. Backstitch and come all the way to the top.
Can we see the little gap? Show us that part.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, so trim your threads, and then you're going to match up and do this
the other
to the
two.
other two panels.
Gotcha.
Yep, and that's step 1 and 2.
Great.